Brett's got me on hold. Brett chime in here in a minute, and I'll have to Paul along. That is an '03 Silverado 5.3, Brent. Okay, that's what I thought. Odd car. Now these here Saturns, how many of you guys ever work on a Saturn? Don't you love them? All right then. I remember one time opening the hood on a Saturday, one came into the dealership, and it was one of those where you had to replace the alternator. It looked to me like you had to pull the motor out to get to the alternator. You know, you didn't really have to, but it felt like that, you know. And the power steering pump had to be removed on another one to get the alternator on. Or if we put an alternator on a Lincoln MKZ last semester, then you had to pull the AC compressor off to get to the alternator. Had to take all the juice out of the system and all that sort of stuff. So, but it put a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, something about a Saturn, it's just, you know. And so what we did was, there's another one that came in here. Have you ever seen one of them things where when you go to start the car, you're using the same key you've always used, and it wouldn't turn? All of a sudden the keys, it's like you got the wrong key. And so one of those came in here, Saturn, with that kind of problem, and we had to drill it out and replace it with another lock cylinder. But to get the lock cylinder, which is, they're getting tighter and tighter on that, they had to go to the Saturn dealership with a proof of ownership, a birth certificate, driver's license, all kinds of stuff or something, to prove they owned that car before they could get a lock cylinder for it, because they didn't want you stealing somebody's car. Like, who's going to want to steal a Saturn, okay? All right, so anyway, it was confusing for a while. I absorbed the idea that for several years the Saturn didn't have anything except an S-Series, you know, in the early cars and all that. Or if they did, I didn't know about it. Well, GM founded the Saturn Car Company in 1985 as its first new brand, spent $3 to $5 billion in the initial process. That little car seemed to have a lot of potential. On the first 5 years of production, fully 7 out of 10 people that bought one traded in a foreign car on a Saturn. And that was the original intent of the Saturn line, built in Spring Hill, Tennessee, to compete with foreign nameplates with a car that had its own network of dealers. All right. But for 20 years, they lost money every year, except one. 1995, 280,000 units sold, and that same year, Saturn enjoyed the distinction of being the most stolen car in America. How about that? All right, now this one here, one that came in here, she owned this 2002 L300. She had to decide if she wanted to replace the Saturn with another nameplate or spend several $100s getting this one back. I need a thermostat for a 2003 Silverado with a 5.3 in it. And it's going to be on the work order.
On the work order,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. That's it.
All right, you want the one with the housing?
Yeah, got to have the whole thing.
Okay.
All right.
Uh,
All right. Figured he'd be back on there in a minute. You see how long I was on hold? I got several slides into my presentation. All right, so when talking to somebody, sometimes they don't tell you everything you need to know. I used to have this girl that would call me. She was actually our go-to girl that would, when I was working in Texas, she would go to Port Arthur and Beaumont and get stuff, and she drove an old 74 Ranchero that had about 600 zillion miles on it. The springs were wore out and it was bouncing and all that kind of stuff, you know. And she would say, God, when I put my car in gear, it goes, why did that now? And I said, well, how am I supposed to do anything with that? Wear your seatbelt and drive it back, you know. One day she says, and she said, there was a bird that hit my windshield going 80 miles an hour and broke it. And I told Kent, I says, Cindy said a bird hit her windshield going 80 miles an hour and broke it. He said, front windshield or rear windshield? So it must have been a fast flying bird. Anyway, one day something popped under the hood, and after that she'd been afraid to drive the car. So I told her, bring it up to the shop, we'd see what we could see. And what we saw wasn't good. And she brought it in on, her dad brought it on a shredder, I connected the jumper to the car, she started it up, drove it into the service base, sounded healthy. Of course, it could still have hit her head gasket leaks. That one sounded pretty healthy when we first started it, didn't it? Out there. And so I had her fill out paperwork, gave her the job, the two capable first and ever semester students. The two students I gave it to's names were Lee and Grant, believe it or not. Now that's a real name. And you know, Grant she was a girl, and you know, Lee was a veteran that I gave it to. Well, that's what I found. First thing, there was no indication of what the pop noise had been. The oil dipstick showed nice clean oil. But the third thing was there was enough oil in the coolant, looked like heavy whipped cream mixed with whipped butter, butter. That the whole coolant system was full of that crud right there. What would cause this? Now, if you've seen oil and water mixed in an engine, you know that's what you're looking at. So how does oil get into the water?
For the cylinders,
Hmm?
for the cylinders, and the
That's a possibility. The most, and most vehicles aren't built like this one was. But what the deal was with this one was, yeah, usually in case it's an oil cooler. If it's got one, this one does. I did a fixed search just for the heck of it, see if what we were thinking was right. Probably Saturn 3-liter engines, and it was time for exploratory surgery. It's talking about oil in the water. A bunch of them was oil coolers. So let's look at that. Let's go after that. Let's see what we see. You know, what else you gotta do? That's what it looked like when you pull the oil cooler out. You had to take the top off the engine, and there was a little cover there you had to take off. When you pull, you know, of course you had to take the lines going to the oil cooler off. You see where they hook up. And you had to pull them off there. And see, antifreeze flows around that. Oil flows through it, and that's supposed to be cooling the oil. Now, have you seen oil coolers on a lot of vehicles nowadays? Where are they usually located? If they've got an oil cooler, where do you see them? You know?
Under the front bumper?
in front of the radiator.
Well, yeah, sort of. You'll see some probably have it in the radiator, but there's a lot of them. Well, the ones that have that, I'm sorry, the ones that have that will have this thing adapter that's between the oil filter and the block, and then it'll go somewhere else to an external cooler typically. But I mean, like a lot of your Chevrolets, you know, they'll have an oil cooler in one side of the radiator and a transmission cooler on the other side. But the oil cooler runs are typically a little bit bigger. But anyway, we had to take that thing out of there, and this was a mess. I mean, this was just an absolute mess. You know, it's just no fun having to clean that mess out of there. And so the thermostat, see, there's the plate. See up at the top, there's the plate that you had to take off to get to the oil cooler, and the thermostat goes right here. And Kendrick, you're 2 hours late. All right. Okay, the coolant thermostat's in that same valley right to the passenger side of the oil cooler cover, and it means the intake has got to be removed to get the thermostat on. You got to pull the intake off, put the thermostat on it. It's like a lot of where you got to pull the intake off nowadays, change spark plug. You know, I mean, there are quite a few of them out there like that. Some of them you think you got to pull the intake off to change the plug, but you really don't. But anyway, this one here was bad news. All right. Problems with the oil filter. Now this oil filter was one of those cartridge types. You see how I got it laid out down there? Okay, so basically there was supposed to be some little blade-like affairs, and I'll show you in a minute what they look like when they're broke off on there. So when you you put your wrench on that oil filter, you're supposed to screw that cap off of there while this stays. Then you change out the cartridge. While we started trying to screw that off of there, this whole thing was turning. That's not supposed to happen. This is supposed to stay still, so we got a chain wrench and we put on it and held that while we screwed that off. All right, so it's a wet cartridge type. You know, it's always got me, the wet cartridge type oil filters usually cost $7 or $8, but the spin-on ones with the metal shell cost $5, $3, $4. They're less money. Some of them are $11, you know, for these cartridge type filters. But it seems to me like you're not having to use that metal shell. You could make it a little cheaper, you know. All right, that's what was broke off. See, this little part right here was supposed to keep that from turning. And the vane on the bottom of that thing wasn't intact anymore. The whole filter housing was this whole thing was trying to turn. And so we used the chain wrench to hold the housing while we blow the cover off. We had to order one of these and get it in there. You're 3 hours late. All right. So we got the trust but verified. We did an air test on the oil cooler, and some soapy water revealed the leak, so we had found the source of our peanut butter problem. What we did was we stopped up the other end down there, you know, put something between it and the vise and clamped it so that air couldn't go anywhere. And we put shop air in there to the tune of just, you know, gentle squirt. You don't do the full, you know, 150, 200 pounds of shop air or whatever. You know, you just basically go put 35, 40, 50 pounds of air there, you know, like that. And we put soap on it, and we seen all these bubbles here coming out of here. Or I should say, we saw all these bubbles coming out of here. And so that told us right quick that we had found our source of our oil leak into the coolant. That's basically what we were wanting to. Okay, we had to get rid of the peanut butter. This one here is a replacement. See, it looks a little different, but it's made to fit in there. And it just so happened that we combed the country and found a Saturn dealer that happened to have one on the shelf that nobody had bought. And it was pretty pricey. It was $378 for that little part right there. And we got a replacement oil filter housing for $60 from that same dealership. So we put them, had fixed the oil filter up, helped all that, wasn't gonna be cheap. Now, the best to use the right stuff here, this sealer is what the Saturn shop calls for, this stuff here, GM, because the environment's so hostile. Whenever you're thinking about doing something in a way that's not what the manufacturer specified, you basically need to think about what's at stake. So maybe it's not gonna destroy the car, but maybe you don't wanna pull all that stuff back apart again. You know what I mean? You don't wanna have to go back in there. Now, you want to put this back together, be done with that part of it. And so, of course, you know there's gonna be a thermostat too. All right, so put some of that stuff on the sealer, did it up right. Got that cover ready, cleaned all that off real good. How many of you guys know, have you ever had a problem because you didn't clean the gasket off good enough when you was putting it back together? You ever had that? It's an easy mistake to make if you're not. I've actually seen people that I've had in here and I'll be saying, okay, we're putting this water pump on here, right? Somebody's got a car with a leaking water pump or like that. So they keep working on the gasket, and they say, okay, I'm done. And then you look at it and it looks pretty good. But when you get your fingers over it, you can feel the bumps where you didn't get all the gasket. And anything that's uneven like that, it's going to seep water there, or oil or whatever. So it's a whole lot better off to take your piece of crocus cloth and sand that thing where it's really smooth, scrape and all that stuff. They also got some gasket remover that you can spray on there that'll bubble up and help, get it off if it's really, really tough. But preparing a gasket surface is like an art, basically. Now what I like about Pilchers over there, if you send them a cylinder head, they do a valve job on it. They want their valve stem seals that came out of your cylinder head again. Well, they put that thing in there, he puts it in his cylinder head machine, and he just barely touches it across there. But when you get the cylinder head back, it's wrapped in plastic, and the bottom of it, he hasn't necessarily resurfaced it, but he's hit it close enough with his machine to where it's absolutely perfect. You're ready to put it back on there, you don't have anything to do except cleaning your block and all that. So, anyway, we did that one up right. All right, I sold them a new radiator. Think about that too. They're gonna need a new radiator. All right, let me ask you this. Have you seen Dexcool turn into something vaguely similar to what I showed you? It looks like red mud that came out of the creek bank down there. And that is really, really, really hard to get out of there. I mean, because it's everywhere, and you usually have to place a radiator and clean it. You have to flush it 2 or 3 or 4 times. But you guys will see that sooner or later. You're going to take a cap off and look, and you'll see something that looks like modeling clay in there, except it's little, rusty red stuff. I mean, it's real fine too. Iron, whenever iron oxide rust is so fine, if you got rust in your fuel tank, it can go through the fuel filter and clog the fuel injectors. It'll just go right through the fuel filter because those particles are so tiny. So, new thermostat was a no-brainer. We're going to put that in here. This is a lot of trouble to get to, so while we're there, we're going to put one in it because thermostat don't cost that much. With the radiator out, we poured dishwashing soap and hot water in the thermostat housing port, caught the water in a big drain pan. We put below the lower radiator hose. We just kept pouring stuff through there. Now, I will tell you this. Get away from the notion that it's going to be like brand new when you're done. You can get just most of that stuff out of there, but you're going to still have to go back and do some other stuff here. All right, here. The worst mistake you can make is to send a vehicle out with a problem you didn't catch. Now, Mr. Emmanuel here was giving us some good advice on that. He says we need to make sure the fan's coming on his truck. Because if the fan's not coming on, let's bring his fan blowing through the radiator, see if that helps, Of course it didn't, but anyway, and you remember what we found on that? Some of y'all weren't in on that deal. When we cranked that truck up and it got hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and of course the thermostat's in the bottom radiator hose, which is good for filling it up because the air comes out easier, right? I don't know why they took so long to put them in so many cars. If the thermostat's in the bottom radiator hose, when you're pouring the coolant in there, it'll fill the block up, and usually the air goes out better. Toyota's done that. Volkswagen did it back in the early 80s on their Rabbits and stuff, late 70s. But one way or another, we felt a hot engine but a cold radiator. Now, Nick, what does that mean? Hot engine, cold radiator.
Hot engine, cold radiator.
Yeah. What lets the coolant go through the radiator when the engine gets to operating temperature?
What you say?
The,
You said what?
what lets the coolant go through the radiator when the engine gets to operating temperature? The
Thermostat?
thermostat, right? You got it? That's where we're going on that one. I was trying to give you the answer, man.
I said, that was at both sides.
Oh, okay, well, okay. So, got trust but verify. Now, who remembers my trick for seeing if you've got an intermittently operating cooling fan? Tell me about it. Yeah, did we do that on yours? Okay, what did we do?
A test light for a spinner, and if the light turns off, you have a
Yeah.
grounding or
What you're gonna do is find the terminal that goes out to that fan, unplug that relay, in other words, unplug the relay, find the terminal that goes out to the fan, hook the test light to the hot side, because the other side of that fan is gonna have ground coming through the brushes. Now, if you touch that terminal and you turn that fan, if that light ever goes out, that's a bad fan. I started testing vehicles that way because people would come in and they say, my car's trying to overheat, my air conditioner pop-offs going off at stoplights. And it would happen over and over and over again. You bring it in there and you let it run and kick off on and off on and off on and off on, you never get to do it. You don't put it on there, just guessing, because they're gonna come back and say, hey, I didn't fix my car, I want money back, this kind of junk. So you could let it kick off and on 10 times in your service bay, and then they take it down there before they get to the favorite stop sign and done it again. So what I did was, I got to thinking about this, and I started testing them that way. And you can smoke one out every time like that. If that light ever goes out, that's a go, no-go test. How many of you know when you're testing, some tests are reliable and some tests are not? Can you categorically say, let's say that you're checking a catalytic converter, because we're in emissions this semester too. You got your temperature gun, going into the catalytic converter, it should be cooler than going out of the catalytic converter, right? If the catalytic converter is working right. Okay, well, one time we had a Monte Carlo in here, like a 2001 model, and it had poor power concern. Felt like a catalytic converter. Seemed like it wasn't breathing good either, but on that one, the rev limiter was kind of low, and so it would go home, whenever you hit it. So I said, well, let's check it with temperature gun. So we go to the temperature gun, we get 400 here, 600 there. Well, that don't really seem bad, really. This is not the light off converter, it was the one farther back. And so I said, well, the muffler shop people, what they like to do, just as a quickie, is they take a 1/8 drill bit and they drill a hole right in front of the catalytic. They suspect if it's the one that's not the light off, if it's the back cap, and they take a pressure gauge and just hold the hose up to that hole and see if there's pressure there. We did that on that and had nothing to lose. You know what you do when you're done? You put a pop rivet in it, or a screw or something, to stop that leak. Anyway, we held that thing up there, and that thing pegged out a little vacuum pressure gauge. It goes up to it pegged it out. Now it's supposed to have like 1-2 pounds at the most, but it had, and so when we pulled it off, all that vermiculite had come loose and was getting in there clogging it all up. In spite of the fact that it passed the temperature test, it failed the pressure test. The pressure test tells the truth, or typically there is could be maybe downstream, maybe a baffle in the muffler could come loose and stop it up, but that don't hardly ever happen. Typically, I want to test that when it tells me something, I know I can trust it. Like on an alternator, if you're checking between the stator, between the big post and the housing, then you swap around on diode check, you may pass that test, but that's not a go, no-go test. It only is a good test if it fails. You see, if it passes that test, it doesn't mean everything else is okay. So you got to sort of weigh the troubleshooting out with a test like that. All right? Hold on. With a new radiator in place, along with a new thermostat and the hose clamps tight, but with the manifold still out of the way, we pressure tested the cooling system and found the doggone water pump leaking. Here's another one. If you've worked on a lot of stuff, you'll say, okay, I know what I'm going to do on this. Snap, snap, click, click, click. You do the work, you do it right. And the car says, no, you're not done yet. You want to know one of the things you don't ever want to let out of here or anywhere? Everything else has been done right, but when you put it in park, it don't quite go in park. We had that on the one we put a motor in last semester. We didn't change anything. When we went to put it in park, it wouldn't go all the way in park. You could adjust that cable all you wanted to, but it would not go all the way in park. And when you put it in park, you thought it was in park, but you'd hear it go brrrr, and it would try to roll away. Now, why is that particularly dangerous?
because you don't know if it's ever really in park.
Do you know the guy that played Chekhov on Star Trek got killed by his Jeep because he thought it was in park and it wasn't? And it was a brand new vehicle. He thought he had it in park and he walked down to the end of his driveway to get his mail, and that Jeep followed him down there and pinned him against the thing. If it won't stay in park, you need to not give that back to the customer, because it will kill somebody, or it can, or cause really, really, really serious injury that's life changing. So if it won't go in park, and you know it won't go in park, do not let it out of there until you figure it out. Now, on that one, what we did was we took all I did was I went, there's another transmission over here, and I took that little piece of linkage off of it, and I put it on that transmission, and it went completely in park. I don't know why, the thing looked just alike, but I changed that little piece of linkage that goes on the transmission, shift ring, and fixed that one. Now, I don't know what I'd have done if I hadn't had that other transmission over, because this thing wasn't bent or anything, it just looked,
That was from that,
that's,
Suburban.
yeah, that's Suburban. Anyway,
yeah, that's from when they dropped.
yeah. Let's swap out the water pump. So that's simple, right? Right here. Pull that. Support the engine. Pull that off. Pull the belt off. Pull that tensioner off. Pull that cover off. Change that water pump out. Lather, rinse, and repeat. Now put it all back together. Piece of cake. Finally got that done. Put the water pump on, manifold is off, fresh motor oil, 40 minutes of bleeding the coolant system. Make sure it's bled out. It ain't like pouring water in a bucket, okay? We watched it as the coolant fan kicked on and off about 5 times. If the coolant fan kicked, remember on the Chevy truck this morning, the coolant fan kicked on, did not go back off. It kicked on high. The temperature kept climbing. We knew there was a problem. Now if it kicks on and off, and on and off, and on and off, and you've already tested your fan, you know that the coolant, the system's able to handle heat. All right, so always make sure the coolant system's full, and make sure the fan's working every single time. If it's got an electric fan on it, don't get in too big of a hurry and put that thing out the door and burn something up, okay? Coolant fan cycle, the reservoir's full, the heater's blowing warm air, everything's peachy. Whenever you're doing the coolant system, when you're filling it up, turn the heater on. If it was working before, it'll be working when you're done. If it's low on cooling, you won't have heat. Got that? But you need to know what's working before, you have something else wrong with it. All right, coming back a few days later, said her car was making a noise she hadn't heard before. Really? Turned out to be a header pipe gasket. Something we didn't even touch. It was making a whistling noise, because the little header pipe gasket was a metal one. And some of them try to guilt you into thinking all our future problems will be your fault. You worked on my car and now this is wrong, and it had to have something to do with what you did. Never heard that. In this part of the country, whenever they think, let's say it's not fixed, they'll come back and say, just like it was, just like it was. I don't know how many different people I've heard say those words. We fixed it, but I let her know we knew the noise was there before. I said, you trying to pull something on us, I ain't gonna charge you for this, but we know that you were hearing this noise before, and now you're trying to act like, while it's here, can you come back and fix it? She didn't mention it first time around, but it was it before. But be honest and give them the benefit of the doubt, because maybe it was something you've done, right? Don't sweat the small stuff and be transparent with customers. Sometimes it's a good idea to say, whatever is on your mind. Like, not be ugly with them, but you can basically, what I told her was, I said, now and I know that this thing was making this noise before, because we didn't touch that header pipe. And it had nothing to do with anything we did, but anyway, that's about all. That's the end of that.